Hi, my name's Tali, and today I'm going to be talking about my autism diagnosis / assessment experience and offering some advice that I have from my own experience if you are awaiting an assessment. So this is the video I've wanted to film since I got my diagnosis, because in the lead up to my assessment I watched so many of these videos and I found them really helpful. So I wanted to give you my experience so you can just get another idea of what it might be like. The first thing I want to say is, if you get an NHS diagnosis, a private diagnosis, or even if you are self-diagnosed, you are valid. Getting diagnosed with autism is a really difficult and long process, especially as an adult, because you've learnt to mask all your traits over years and years, and it's a really difficult process. And you might not get the result you expect when you get your assessment, but just know that you can accept yourself as neurodiverse without a diagnosis. And the other thing I want to highlight is that this is my experience. Every single person's experience will be completely different, because it really depends on who you get, where you go, and even the day. I know someone who went to the exact same service as me but had a completely different experience, and that is just down to the fact that they had different clinicians. So just know that this is my experience, yours might be completely different. I was diagnosed through the NHS service, so my local autism clinic. I'm going to start with 3 tips that I would give you for your assessment. So I've got them printed down. Tip number 1 is just be yourself. Be as much yourself as you possibly can. They want to see you. Try your hardest not to mask. It's really difficult, but they really need to assess you and what you're like in that situation. Tip number 2, go prepared but not too prepared. There are 2 reasons for this. The first reason is, if you go overly prepared, you may anticipate what's going to happen and sort of react in a way that you think they want to see, but really they just want to see you. They don't want to see someone who's prepared their answers to the questions, and they want to see how you react in that situation with those tasks in those questions. So don't over-prepare because of that, but also don't over-prepare because, as I said at the beginning, everyone's experience is completely different. And obviously if you are expecting that you're autistic, maybe you absolutely love to prepare. I know that I feel I have to know every single detail in the exact order and what is going to happen when I go to things like this, or when I go anywhere, when I exist. But you really cannot, because it may be a completely different experience and then you will be thrown off, and it can be really difficult. And tip number 3 is take someone with you. They usually advise this, so if you have a parent or someone who's known you from very young, then definitely take them with you. This isn't possible for everyone, but if you have this opportunity, then do take it, because it's very, very helpful. And I spoke to my mum and got some tips for your person who comes with you, so I will get into those later. So yeah. So the first step is to go to your psychiatrist or doctor and ask them for a referral. Tell them everything about why you think you're autistic, or why you think you would benefit from an autism assessment, and see what they say. Not all doctors or psychiatrists will know of your local, well, the psychiatrist should know, but not all GPs will know where your local autism clinic is. My GP did not, so I had to, well, I'm very fortunate that I have my mum who did a lot of research beforehand, and she knew the clinic that I needed to be referred to, so she told my doctor and I got that referral. Once you've got the referral, you have to do a questionnaire at your GP surgery. I've got my letter from my diagnosis here, and it says that I did an autism quotient questionnaire, which I completed at my GP surgery. I don't have a great deal of memory of this because it was a very long time ago, so yeah, I don't really remember. But it's just a questionnaire on the very basic, stereotypical autistic traits. So just fill that out honestly. And then I was sent a massive pack questionnaire in the post, which I then had to send off to the clinic. It had lots and lots of questions about my history, my current life, my education, everything. And just fill that out. I got my mum to help me. I'm really bad at answering questionnaires and scoring scales and stuff, so I really struggle with that kind of thing, so I always get my mum to help me. If you've got someone who has known you for a long time, then get them to help you fill that out, especially as I think some of the questions on it were directly asked for your caregiver, or yeah. So I was referred to the autism clinic on the 25th of October 2018 by my GP, and then it took a bit over a year to get my first appointment. My first appointment was on the 21st of January 2020. So it was a long wait, but not as long as some people. It could be anywhere. It could be a couple of years, it could be less than a year. Just be prepared for a long wait. So your first appointment, or my first appointment, was an initial assessment, and in this assessment they had a speech and language therapist and a senior practitioner, and basically we went and sat in a room with them. They asked me loads of questions. It was a really, really positive experience for me because I'm not very good at talking, and I've been to a lot of mental health professionals in the past, and although they've tried their best, they've never been very good at helping me with that or really understanding. It felt really positive to be around people who actually know what they're doing and know and understand why I was struggling to talk so much. So they had a good balance of talking to me and talking to my mum, so that it wasn't like making me inferior just talking to my mum, but also wasn't making me feel too pressured by completely talking to me. So it was a really positive experience. They were really understanding, and yeah, it just felt like a really, I don't know, it just felt okay. It felt good afterwards. Also, during my initial assessment, my mum took a letter, like a A4 sheet, which she'd written out a load of my history on it, just so she didn't forget stuff, and she could also give it to them. She then took this to my next appointment as well, just in case they hadn't kept it, which they hadn't, so it was really helpful and they did appreciate it. So yeah, if you have the opportunity, then get a whole thing written out. During that appointment there was also a questionnaire I had to fill out. I can't really remember what was on it, but I really struggled to like physically do stuff in appointments like that, so I couldn't pick up the pen or like do it, so she helped me with that, which was really good because she understood that I wasn't able to do it, so she just would prompt me with my answers and then she'd write it down for me, which was good. And basically the initial assessment is seeing whether you qualify for further testing, and yeah, so it took a few weeks for me to get a letter back to say yes, we would like to give you another appointment. On the 9th of March I had my diagnostic assessment, is that what it's called? And my diagnostic appointment, and they say to have 3 hours available, but mine actually was a little under 2 hours. It wasn't that long at all, and it was not too bad, not too intense. It was quite exhausting, like talking to people so much, but well, not that I spoke at all, but it was exhausting, but it wasn't as bad as I was expecting, if that makes sense. So when I got there, there was a sensory questionnaire that they asked me to fill out in the waiting room, and that just had basic sensory questions, sensory needs and stressors, different things that you have struggled with in the past and things you struggle with now, things that you like now and things that you used to like sensory wise, whether they've changed or not, anything sensory wise. And also there was a questionnaire about anxiety. It was like social anxiety, general anxiety, all kinds of anxiety. The diagnostic appointment was run by a consultant psychiatrist and a psychologist. So the consultant psychiatrist went off with my mum for a majority of the appointment, and I was with the psychiatrist. It says on here that my mum did an informant questionnaire. I'm not sure when she did this, but basically that's for your guide, person, parent, caregiver to do, so you don't need to worry about that. For most of the appointment my mum was with the psychiatrist, and so I feel like this is a good time to give her tips that she gave me to give you, so I have them written down. So her first tip is take as much information as you can, historical and current, so that you have a lot of evidence of traits and things, so that you know what you're talking about, because when you get there you might forget stuff and it's just useful to take it with you. Also prepare questions for either diagnostic outcome. So prepare questions to ask if you do get a diagnosis, what happens next, where can we get some support, and where can we learn more about this. So make sure you're prepared with questions about that. But also there is a possibility that you won't get the outcome you expect and that you don't get diagnosed, so go prepared with questions about, okay, so if it's not autism, what is it? Where can we go to get some support if it's not autism? I know that it can be a shock. It was a shock for us. Even though we were going there expecting to get a diagnosis, it was still a shock in the moment. So she forgot her questions, and yeah, just make sure you go prepared with questions. Also go prepared with research on autism so that you know what you're talking about, you know what the traits are, and you know how to correctly articulate yourself. And if you don't get the diagnosis, it can be really disappointing, but just make sure that if you truly believe that you are autistic and you would benefit from a diagnosis, then fight for it. Try and find someone else who knows about autism and see if they can help you to explain yourself properly. I know there are a lot of Facebook groups that are really helpful for that kind of thing. Basically, my mum's 3 tips are: be prepared with information, research and questions. Whilst my mum was with the psychiatrist, I was with the psychologist, and she did the ADOS test with me. So there were a series of tasks. She did say at the beginning that if I didn't want to do any of them, that was okay and I didn't have to, and there were a few that I didn't do. I'm very, very anxious in a therapist-y type appointment thing, so I really struggle with speaking. I also really struggle with moving. I tend to just freeze and like hand stim, so I can't physically pick up a pencil or a puzzle piece or whatever. And leading on from that, the first task was a puzzle. So it was lots of green and red counter shape things, and then you had to fill out the puzzle with these shapes. Yeah, I don't really know what it was looking at, but just fill it out how you would fill out that puzzle normally. Another one of the tasks was reading a book with no words. It was about frogs flying. You basically just had to turn each page and then say what was happening on that page. And then there was a page that had a lot going on in it, and she basically said what's happening in this image, and you just had to pick out a few details that you could see of what was happening. There was a mime task, and she said like, here's a sink, here's a toothbrush, toothpaste, tap, show me how you brush your teeth. And she said that because I'm a theatre student I should be able to do this one, but I couldn't. Just because I was so anxious. I think I can mime, like, normally. I don't know. And then there was a task where you had to pick out a few objects and tell a story with them. This is another one that I did not do. Yes, she told me a story and it was a really interesting story. It was great, it was fun, but yes, I did not tell a story. We filled out the ADOS questions, and like then she filled out her notes, and while she was filling out her notes she gave me a fidget toy to play with. It was like one of those things where you can imprint your hand or imprint your face, you know that you see in like Tiger or The Entertainer, that kind of, you know. But I did not fiddle with it because again I cannot move my hands away from fiddling when I am in appointments. I can't physically do something. So after that part they sent us away to the waiting room. We were there for a little while whilst they had a meeting to discuss the outcome. I really didn't know what was going to happen. They brought us back into the room and I got my diagnosis. He was just like, yes, we do think you're autistic. And it was weird, awkward and a bit of a shock. Like, as much as I was expecting it, there was always this doubt in the back of my head because I'd gone so many years of trying to get an answer and never getting the right answer, so it was a really like awkward long silence and I didn't know what to do. But I didn't know how he wanted me to respond, so I just sat there. And then he asked me a few questions about like making sure I understood what this meant, and saying about how they have a support group and stuff but they can't give that out yet due to staffing. Again, my local clinic is very understaffed and they have a lot of staff like coming in and out, so it's a very difficult service, and yeah, I'm very grateful that I got my diagnosis. It is a huge relief to have it finally after 2 years of waiting and finally have an answer to some of the things that I struggle with, and yeah, it's a real relief. And then some places I've heard of like give you all your pack of information there on the day and like cards and stuff, but mine did not. I think because they work differently, but also due to the time that I was diagnosed, it was 2 weeks before the UK went into lockdown for COVID-19. It meant that I didn't actually get the paperwork for my diagnosis for quite a long time. They had to, because all the people had gone off to work in different places to help with COVID, so it took a while, but eventually I got this few sheets of paper with all of the information that, from my appointment, results of the assessment, and then just filled out all the criteria and how I meet that criteria. And then there's also a sheet with advice and information, so lots of websites and places that I can go to get help and support and stuff. I filmed this video 3 times and I don't know if this one was still helpful, but I really hope it was, and yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope this was helpful, and I hope if you are getting your diagnosis, or you're hoping to get a diagnosis, it's a really hard, difficult process, and I'm very grateful that I had my mum, who was very knowledgeable of the healthcare system, because she's worked in it and she's also done a lot of research to make sure that we went fully prepared, and so that we went with the information that we would need. So if you've got someone who can do the preparation for you, then ask them and be very grateful, because I'm very grateful for my mum. And if you don't, then make sure you go prepared yourself, and just prepared with the right information, not necessarily prepared with what's going to happen, because like I said before at the beginning, and yeah. Okay, I hope that was helpful. Thank you, bye.